Solo Leveling by Chu Gong. Chapter 51 Part 1 The Retreat of Millions and the Counterattack of One. It's Hunter Jin Woo-sung. President Go's words were heard by hunters all over the world. Some watched him on the news, some heard through their peers, and others saw the clips making the rounds on video sharing platforms. Their reactions were one and the same. Going to Japan right now? What in the world is he thinking? Everyone was aware that the Japanese government would give an unimaginably large reward to whomever could put out the raging fire in their homeland. Yet the rest of the global community refused to involve their highest-ranked hunters in the unprecedented crisis, a result of the devastating body count left in the wake of S-rank beast Kamish, which led to hunter communities closing themselves off to one another. Not that they had permission to go anyway, but who would dare to even if commanded? He's out of his mind. The American S-rank hunters gathering in the most luxurious hotel in Maryland also caught wind of President Go's announcement. Most of them had had their powers augmented by Mrs. Sellner, so it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say they were one of the most powerful groups in the world. This gave them license to laugh at the story of the reckless hunter from a tiny country in Asia. The dude probably reawakened recently and is overestimating his power. Does he really think fighting insects is the same as fighting giants? I'm telling you, overconfident hunters inevitably end up dead. It's ironic that killing those ants will lead to his own demise. They'd watched Jinwoo's brilliant performance on Jeju Island, and there was no denying his strength. But giants were a totally different beast. Jinwoo's ability to summon so many minions was the perfect counter to the army of ants. But a single giant-type magic beast was powerful enough to be the boss of an A-rank dungeon. No matter how strong Jinwoo was, would he be able to handle the giants on his own? Moreover, there were the unpredictable, almost animalistic movements of the boss giant that had squashed Yuri Orlov. How could a single hunter defeat something so quick and agile despite its mass? The hunters started making wagers for fun. I'll bet my yacht on him getting killed on the first day. I'll bet my house he'll last too. Okay then. You really think that'll be the case? National level hunter Thomas Andre, who had been quietly eating his meal in a corner, set his cutlery down on the table. Many powerful hunters had emerged following the subjugation of Kamish, but none of them exceeded those who had survived the greatest crisis in history. Everyone clammed up as Thomas smirked. I'll bet the Scavenger Guild headquarters that he survives. His eyes scanned the betting hunters from behind a pair of sunglasses before he took his leave of the dining hall. An uncomfortable silence fell on the room behind him. One of the hunters frowned and broke the silence. That guy sure knows how to kill the mood. Are you surprised? He's always like this. Never mind him. Yeah, I don't care how strong the Korean hunter is. There's no way he can stop a bunch of S-rank giants on his own. A hunter who had been quietly listening from the side spoke up. Hang on, I heard he's taking one more person with him. His colleagues nodded. They knew it. Even the craziest man wouldn't head into hell by himself. Which idiotic S-rank agreed to tag along? It's not an S-rank. The three hunters exchanged looks. He was bringing in a hunter lower than S-rank to deal with S-rank giants? Probably an A-rank healer? No, a D-rank tank named Jin Ho-yu. Rendered speechless, the trio's mouths snapped shut. Jin Woo-sung really had lost every single marble, huh? They say crazy understands crazy. That would certainly explain why Thomas Andre was cheering Jin Woo on. Incheon International Airport. Excuse us. Please make way. Jinho proudly walked through the crowd of people, waving away the swarm of curious bystanders. He wore humongous sunglasses and carried 2 bags filled with equipment. His look of determination rivaled that of an actor getting ready to shoot the climax of a movie. "We're coming through." Jin-woo wordlessly followed the path Jinho had cleared. Kawshak, 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 Kawshak. Lights flashed as the reporters continuously snapped photos to capture every second of Jin-woo's appearance. While Jinho was visibly excited, Jin-woo appeared calm and collected. Once Japan caught wind of Jin-woo's plan, they'd set a private jet for him, and naturally, he was allowed to bypass airport customs and security protocols. Some familiar faces saw him off: President Gun Hee-go and manager Jin Chul-woo of the Hunters Association. The three men exchanged nods as they huddled together. Thanks to their keen senses, they didn't need to raise their voices amid the noise of the airport. President Go looked wistful. "I must admit, I'd still like to dissuade you." Jin-woo was the strongest hunter in Korean history, so President Go was wary of letting him run off willy-nilly. Not to jinx things, but what if something happened in Korea while Jin-woo was away? But Jin-woo stood firm. "I'm sorry, but I want to go." This was a golden opportunity for him to both level up and increase his shadow army by getting rid of the giants. To that end, he had requested Japan give him all the rights to the magic beasts, a condition the government eagerly accepted. President Go chuckled. "Is it because of the magic beasts?" Jin-woo grinned. "Yes, I want to fight magic beasts. In that case, there's no helping it." Jin-woo grasped President Go's outstretched hand as they exchanged heartfelt goodbyes. "All I ask is you come back safe and sound." Kawshak, 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 Kawshak. Their handshake was memorialized by hundreds of cameras. The news of Jin-woo's impending arrival was a light in the darkness for the survivors in Japan. The few remaining TV stations kept broadcasting footage of him, and the public clung to hope as they watched him on their TV screens. Despite having shown minimal interest in the Korean-Japanese collaboration during the incident at Jeju, they'd found it thrilling to see the S-rank nth being swept away. At the same time, their desperation grew as the giants' advance to the south accelerated. "They said Hunter Jin-woo's son has arrived in Japan," exclaimed a boy listening to the radio, and the expressions of those around him brightened. But things were still looking grim for those stuck in places where the giants had knocked out the electricity and gas. They had no idea that help was on its way, so they awaited the arrival of a rescue team. "The Japan Self-Defense Forces are here!" Two soldiers from JSDF, with ghostly pale faces, entered the small nursing home run by an elderly couple. The owners sighed in relief at the welcome sight. But the situation was graver than they could imagine. The soldiers shook their heads. "We don't have room for all the patients. We can take a maximum of 3 or 4. The wife protested. "That can't be. We have more than 10 patients with mobility issues." Her husband nodded, but the young JSDF soldiers were anxious to leave. "There's no time to worry about those already at death's door. The giants are headed this way," spat one of the soldiers, drenched in sweat. All the residents in the surrounding area had already been evacuated, so it was only a matter of time before the giants detected the scent of humans and zeroed in. The elderly doctor stared down at the ground for a moment, before finally raising his head, his voice firm. "I cannot abandon my patients. My wife and I promised we would stay by their side to the end." The two young men glared at him, but left with no other choice, they picked up their communicator and spoke loudly to make sure the couple could hear every word. "The civilians here have refused to evacuate. We will retreat without them." The soldiers then ran out the door, and the couple soon heard the ignition of a car's engine. They patted each other on the back and let out long sighs. Suddenly, One of the soldiers rushed back inside, armed with a rifle. "WH, what are you doing?" The elders clutched each other's hands. The soldier bellowed, "If you stay here, those giants will tear you to pieces. Better a quick death than a gruesome one." He pointed the gun at the doctor and his wife in turn as they flinched away from him. "This is your last chance. Will you come with us, or will you die by my hand?" The young man steadied his aim. The couple hesitated. The soldier's intentions were clear. He was hell-bent on evacuating them, even if he had to resort to this. But he was also asking them to turn their backs on their credo of helping those in need, so it was an impossible choice. The moment stretched on for an eternity. A bead of sweat dripped from the young man's forehead, seeped through his eyebrow, and fell into his eyes, blurring his vision. He furrowed his brow and gurgled. The soldier's stomach announced his hunger, but his glare never wavered. "Excuse me, dearie." The startled soldier whipped his gun toward the sickbeds. "Why, yes." In a dark corner of the nursing home room, an old woman propped up in one of the beds held out a tray toward him. On it was a rice ball. The old woman smiled. "If you're hungry, eat this. I don't have much of an appetite." At last, the JSDF soldier lowered his gun. "Here, don't be shy." The young man's hand trembled as he picked up the rice ball. He recalled the reason he decided to don a soldier's uniform in the first place: to protect innocent civilians just like the good people here. Yet he had been about to knowingly abandon these people to the magic beasts. Ashamed of his own powerlessness, he began to cry. He then picked up his communicator and sent his partner away. Shocked, the elderly doctor grabbed his shoulder. "What are you doing?" "I'll stay with you." The young man slung his rifle over his shoulder. "I'm a soldier. I can't run away knowing there are civilians remaining." He forcefully swallowed the rice ball in one gulp and bowed to the old woman. "Thank you for the food. It was delicious." Just then, stomp, stomp, stomp. The soldier resolutely rushed out of the nursing home. A giant was approaching incredibly quickly on all fours, like an animal. "Is that?" As he readied his rifle, something caught his eye. Dangling from the giant's mouth was his partner. "Ah!" The soldier saw red and fired at the approaching threat. Rat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat-tat. Unfortunately, regular weapons were useless against magic beasts, so the giant barreled straight at him, unaffected by the shower of bullets. Click, click. Tears welled in his eyes as he realized the rifle had run out of ammunition. Oh God! The giant tossed the human in its mouth into the air and gobbled it up before leaping at the young soldier. Out of nowhere, a humongous naga slammed into its side, sending the giant tumbling. But the beast sprang back on all fours at a speed that should have been impossible for something its size. Grrrr! The giant pressed itself into the ground and bared its teeth at the naga. It was Jima, former boss of the Naga Nest dungeon and newly recruited shadow soldier. Jima held out his right hand and tightly grasped the black spear that had materialized up from a shadow. He brandished the weapon in front of him, making it clear he wouldn't let anyone pass. Huh? The JSDF soldier couldn't tell if he was dreaming or not. He'd been so sure he was going to be eaten alive, but now another monster was protecting him. Emotion surged through him as he stared at the Naga's imposing back. What is going on? Could they get out of this alive? Could he, the elderly couple, and the nursing home patients possibly survive this giant attack? Tears stung his eyes as the tension dissipated from his body. Here! Someone tried to hand him a colorful handkerchief. The young soldier looked over at a man who appeared younger than himself, gesturing with his chin toward the handkerchief and then nodding. The younger man hadn't spoken Japanese, but the message was clear enough. Is he Korean? The soldier wiped his tears with the proffered handkerchief. Who are you? How did you get here? The Korean man shook his head and gave a thumbs up. Good. Pardon? Very good. Thank you. As the soldier thanked the younger newcomer for what exactly, he wasn't sure. He noticed another man who appeared to be his unexpected acquaintance's colleague, covered in blood. The Japanese soldier knew little about hunters, but even he could tell this new arrival was strong. It's too risky. Jin-woo had already finished scoping out the nursing home. He pointed over his shoulder and told his companion, I need to take this elsewhere. This is too close. Having already witnessed Jin-woo fight giants several times, Jin-ho knew exactly what he was getting at. I'll wait for you here, boss. Got it. Jin-woo spotted the frightened young soldier and walked by, gently patted him on the shoulder as a sign that the kid had done well. The average person didn't have the balls to face a large magic beast on their own with only a rifle. Having raided many dungeons as a Miri rank, he knew how much courage it took. As the JSDF soldier gazed at Jin-woo's back, he couldn't help but softly let out, "Oh!" the weight and warmth of the hand on his shoulder. It felt like his touch had washed away the sheer terror from before and filled him with a huge sense of relief. It was at that moment he remembered the story of the two Korean men who were supposedly running around Japan killing the giants. One was the hunter who was said to have killed S-rank magic beasts almost single-handedly in the past. His name was Jin-woo Sung. Hunter Jin-woo Sung. There was no doubt. It had to be him. Bottom. The soldier's heart raced at the realization that he had met a living legend. He hurriedly turned to the other Korean man. Is that really him? The S-rank Korean hunter? Jin-ho nodded again. Good. Jin-woo approached the two entangled beasts with a frown. Gak. The giant was biting down hard on Jima's shoulder. Although the Naga had the added distraction of protecting the humans behind him, he was a former boss of an A-rank dungeon, and his strength far surpassed the average shadow soldier. That the giant was able to overwhelm him, despite not being the boss, demonstrated just how much of a threat the giants were. Jin-woo scowled at the sight of his soldier getting thrashed, and he bent at the knees, focusing power into his legs. Crick, crock. The asphalt beneath his feet buckled. Boom. Jin-woo shot up toward the giant's face. But his target spotted his split-second approach. Jin-woo had an epiphany. They really are of a different caliber. Jin-woo's fist slammed into the giant's forehead. Bash! He didn't expect his punch to do much damage as he watched the giant pull its head back to minimize the impact. A towering frame and swift movements. No wonder regular hunters felt helpless against them. But Jin-woo wasn't some run-of-the-mill hunter. He summoned a demon monarch's dagger in midair and held out his empty hand toward the giant's face. Ruler's authority. An invisible hand seemed to forcefully pull the magic beast's face forward, quickly closing the gap. Ruh! The giant panicked, not having expected its opponent to counter while airborne like this, and struggled to break free. But it was all in vain. Once in front of his target, Jin-woo activated a skill. Mutilation. SHHK, 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 SHHK. Jin-woo slashed at the giant's face so quickly, he left after images. Grah! Thud. The creature covered its face with both hands as it fell to the ground, blinded and writhing in intense pain. Jin-woo landed softly, assuming his job was done. It's over. But upon sensing Jinwoo's approach, the giant flinched and bolted away. Can giants feel other beings' energies as well? The more he dealt with them, the more he felt these giants were interesting creatures. He considered them colossal weapons of war. His prey was getting farther and farther away, but Jinwoo wasn't about to let it escape. Flash! Jinwoo streaked toward it like lightning. The giant ran for its life on all fours, terrified of the murderous aura giving chase. But the distance between it and the hunter shrank. Belatedly realizing it couldn't lose him, it hastily screeched to a halt and turned to tackle Jinwoo straight on. But the human's presence had disappeared, only to reappear right behind it. Though blind, the giant reflexively turned to look back, making things easier for Jinwoo. The hunter had leaped straight into the air, and now drove in his weapon at full force. Shine! The demon monarch's dagger contained so much magic power from the black heart that it split the giant's head in half. Shun! Guh! The creature couldn't even get out one last scream before it toppled backward like a felled tree. What? That was giant number 3. Jinwoo stuck the landing and let out a sigh of victory. Phew! Boss! Jinho dashed over from where he'd been waiting and thrust a thermos lid containing refreshing, cold tea at Jinwoo, who beamed and accepted it. Thanks! He gulped it down. Huh? Jinwoo turned as he felt something approaching from behind and spotted Jima. The Naga's shoulders slumped in defeat. You fought well. Good job. Following this encouragement, he recalled Jima. As always, the Naga melted into a shadow and was absorbed into Jinwoo's own. Jinho had a question for him. Boss? Jinwoo returned the thermos lid. You sent your other minions in different directions, so is there some special reason you kept the Nagas with you? It was evident Jinwoo could kill a giant on his own, so it wasn't like he needed the Nagas. However, he kept letting them have a go at the giants first before stepping in once they were overwhelmed. Jinho was curious what Jinwoo was up to. The reason was simple. Because I want them to grind. Since the Nagas were new recruits, they were rather low level compared to his other soldiers. Jinwoo had been hoping to level them up by pitting them against the giants, but these had proven to be tougher opponents than he'd expected. However, even though it was a bit of a hassle, this was the best way for the Nagas to gain experience. I guess I can't tell Jinho the truth, huh? Jinwoo grinned. It's because I still feel a little awkward with him. This is my way of getting closer. Oh. Jinho nodded in understanding. It was so easy to fool him. Jinho mulled it over and then enthusiastically replied, You're thoughtful to your minions. That's so you, boss. It was also easy to feel bad about fooling him. Excuse me. Jinwoo turned to see the soldier who had bravely stood up to the giant walking toward them, while glancing at the giant's corpse. Over the man's shoulder, Jinwoo could see the elderly couple who ran the nursing home. Though he hadn't had a conversation with them yet, he could guess what they wanted to say, and that was good enough for him. There was no time to receive their gratitude while other giants were out there rampaging. Jinwoo peered at the defeated giant. Here lay the biggest reason he had come to Japan. Stop! Stop! Jinho rushed to block their paths. Jinho seemed to catch on to things faster than when they first met. Thanks to him, Jinwoo could extract shadows without any distractions. Jinwoo gave Jinho a smile of approval and turned back to the corpse in front of him. He stretched out his hand and murmured, Arise! Viewers, you won't believe what I am seeing now. Takakakakaka. The reporter in the helicopter couldn't help but let out incredulous gasps at the scene unfolding below. The camera panned down to share the sight with the viewers. Several hundred ant magic beasts were marching in an orderly fashion. Leading them was a monstrous ant with wings, Baru. He suddenly looked skyward. "Scraw!" The reporter clapped his hands over his ears at the shrill roar. The rest of the ants came to a halt. 3 giants stood before them. They looked like a group of mice facing a bunch of elephants, yet Baru charged right at them with claws extended into blades. "Scraw!" With the army of ants covering every inch of ground in a swarm of black, the ferocious attack ended instantly. "Oh my God! Oh my God!" the reporter yelled as the ants started gnawing on the bodies of the giants' corpses. Crunch! Crock! On Baru's orders, the ants left enough of the carcasses behind so more shadow soldiers could be created. If anyone got too greedy, Baru didn't hesitate to send them flying with a swift kick. The reporter explained, "They're eating the giants! The insects are eating the giants!" The sight of the horrific, human-eating giants now being consumed by the ants was cathartic to the Japanese people. There was only one problem. "Oh!" Both the reporter and cameraman shrank back as Baru flew up to the helicopter, grabbed the camera focused on him, and crushed it without hesitation. Snap! Yikes! The reporter and the cameraman clung to each other, trembling. Baru wordlessly looked at each of them in turn, then returned to the ground. "Phew! Ha!" The 2 men noisily exhaled. Despite the winged ant's tendency to destroy 10,000,001 cameras, they kept following him around because viewers were clamoring for footage of his troops. So the cameraman took out the extra equipment he'd brought along for this very reason, and the reporter, who had grown used to Baru's antics, continued his assignment without missing a beat. "This has been Kitamura reporting live." Eek! A young girl, probably around 12 years old or so, ran for her life, screaming with tears in her eyes. "Hey-ah!" A giant was chasing her with a creepy smile. But how far could she run on her little legs? The distance between them quickly vanished. The giant bared its teeth and laughed as if enjoying this meaningless game of tag. It extended its arm, which looked significantly longer than those of other giants. Just before it could roughly grab the fragile little girl, though, a streak of blue lightning glanced off the giant's wrist, singeing its skin. ZZZT! Grah! The giant reared up and grabbed its wrist, bellowing in pain. There stood Igris, brandishing a blue sword. He turned to the trembling girl, whose legs had given out, face as white as a sheet. Igris picked her up and quickly retreated from the area. The giant spotted the enemy, who had attacked it, now running away with its food, and its eyes reddened in outrage. Growling, it was enough to make any average person wet themselves in terror. However, someone dared to block the giant's path. It was the elite knight Iron, clad in upgraded armor. He thrust his shield into the ground, puffed up his chest, and let out a mighty cry. Grow aware. Iron is using skill, epic taunt. The opponent has entered a state of aggro. The giant that had been aiming for Igris instantly turned toward Iron. The knight pounded his chest a couple of times and then picked up his shield, which was as big as his whole body, issuing a clear challenge. Rah! The furious giant swung at Iron at full strength. Kapow! But Iron didn't budge. Ranking him up had put him on a whole other level. Bam! 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 After withstanding dozens of attacks, Iron let out a bellow. Whoa! At his signal, the Shadow Soldiers and Ice Bears, who had served Jinwu the longest, launched a coordinated pincer attack. Tank, the leader of the Ice Bear army, shook his head in anticipation of his first battle in a while and roared. Grah! It reverberated through the ground for quite a distance. A reporter who had been watching everything with bated breath whooped at the camera. Viewers, are you seeing this? The minions, Hunter Sung's minions, are attacking the giant. Was this really happening? This particular reporter hadn't trusted Yuri Orlov, so he hadn't expected much from Jin-Woo Sung either. But both Jin-Woo himself and his minions were currently scattered all over the nation and in the process of purging the giants. Maybe, just maybe, Jin-Woo might actually be able to save Japan. The reporter choked up at the thought. "Oh, over there!" The cameraman pointed toward the giant. The reporter quickly turned his teary gaze in that direction. He blurted, "How could this be?" The giant was already teetering as lightning from Igris's sword struck it again and again. It was such a beautiful sight that everyone witnessing it was rendered speechless.